Welcome back to Summer is Coming. I'm your host, Tiny Grimes, and I'm here, as always, with Neil, the real deal. And for those of you naysayers who constantly say, what? Summer is Coming is still going? Of course it is. Of course it is. We may not have the time to do weekly episodes like we want, but we're always here. Am I right, Neil?
Yeah, we're certainly always around, kicking around different ideas and playing some thrones. So glad to bring you a little bit of content. And we're hopefully going to try and start also releasing an audio version of these video podcasts because we've heard a lot of people who would rather just listen to us and not have to look at Tiny.
I'm pretty sure no one has said that directly. They may have been thinking that, Neil, but no one said that. That's a good point, though. So, Neil, have you had a lot of time to play Throne since last we talked?
Yes and no. I had a lot of time for a while there, but now I've gotten pretty busy, and a lot of the time has been spent, I think, similar to you, prepping for the final store championship of the season around here.
Yeah. Or as I call it, the only one. Yeah. I only got to make one this whole season, and so all my eggs were in one basket, and it was at an event where a new pack comes out 3 days before it. So,
Yeah.
made it a little bit interesting and dicey. On the one hand, it's really cool to have a whole new environment, potentially, with a card like First Snow, and then also kind of scary if it's your only store championship. It becomes a little bit of a crapshoot. It's hard to figure out what the meta is going to look like when people have never even seen the cards.
So how do you think you try and figure out an issue like that? Because with these LCGs, I feel like it's a not that uncommon of a thing to be having a tournament plan for just after a new pack.
Yeah.
How do you try and test for cards that haven't been released?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of flawed plans. I mean, the first thing is, once an LCG has been established for a long time, it's not the same. It'll be like maybe there's
Sure.
one card where you're like, this slots into this deck. How does it change it? Does it change its location enough? But that's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with every pack potentially having game altering cards. And for this pack, for me, it was First Snow. And so I did crazy things. I would so I wasn't able to find a lot of good test games because I didn't have a lot of time. So it'd be like 1 in the afternoon. I've got 45 minutes. No one's available. I'm gonna jump on Octagon. I'm gonna open a game that says testing First Snow. A person's gonna come into the game, and I'm gonna say, "Hey, man, I got here to serve in my plot deck. It's actually First Snow. Are you cool with that?" And then they don't have a deck ready for that, and it's terrible testing. But at least it gets you sort of a feel for how that potentially game altering card might work. It's not ideal, but it's a start. How about you, Neil? Do you just ignore it, or do you play against yourself? What's your plan?
I definitely did a little bit of playing against myself just to see how some of the decks sort of ran, if any crazy ideas were even worth playing against other people. And then, yeah, I actually just kind of tried to get games in against you when I could, since we were
Yeah.
both trying to get ready for the first snow of winter coming.
Yeah, the whole so far all of 2.0 has been against how I play. Like I used to write an article series called "Forging the Chain" or something. It was like one of them was how to prep for a tournament, and the number one thing I said is lock a deck in 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time and play it till your eyes bleed. Play it till you know every interaction, every possibility, every matchup you could hit. And so far in 2.0, that just hasn't been possible for me. The meta changes so rapidly. The deck archetypes are changing so rapidly. It feels like every week I'm like, all right, I'll do this deck for 5 games. And then, oh, there's a store championship. I guess I got 5 games of that. I guess I'm rolling with it. And it
Yeah.
makes me uncomfortable personally. It's just not how I tend to play these decks.
Yeah, I kind of like this sort of meta that's constantly shifting. I don't mind trying something new or wacky and just prepping as much as I can with a lot of different ideas and then sometimes even day of the tournament just saying,
Yeah.
this seems like a decent fun deck. I guess I'll try it. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, and I've been doing that as well. It's not my temperament. It's not my personality. It's not who I am. And so it's really I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's definitely taking me out of my comfort zone. I'm just not used to doing that. So we had our tournament, and I had a whole pile of decks that I was considering. I really like Targ Lion armies. I think it's really strong. I think I played it one time. Was it against you where I played it?
Yeah.
So I played it that one time, and then it was just kind of like, there's a lot of testing that needs to be done with this deck, a lot of tweaking. I don't have time. I built, so most of my testing was Lanny, Lord of the Crossing. Like the second first snow was spoiled, and the second we got a release date. And I was like, okay, I have to test this. And so that's what I was testing. And so I tested all kinds of different variants. It started with a good stuff Lannister, Lord of the Crossing, which morphed into much closer to the Banff deck that Lucas was running, and we'll get into that later. But 3 days before the event, I put together Tyrell, Lord of the Crossing, and totally fell in love with it. The Arbor, as we'll get to, is bananas. The combos you can do, and I'm sure you've seen these, Neil. So I had, in my testing, I had one play where it was like, I went Queen of Thorns, the challenge went through. I Tears to Gregor. I popped in a Slobber, or Horus. I then did Horus's challenge to stand her, to do another intrigue, to drop in an Oleana's Informant, to name another intrigue, to do another challenge with Oleana's Informant. I got 5 challenges in, a Tears, 2 extra guys, and 6 power, all on one turn, without having, like, really ridiculous things, right? It wasn't, like, total corner cases. It was just kind of like, Queen of Thorns does baller things if you don't stop her. And I really got these disgusting boards, and I only lost 1 game, and I was really high in the deck, and so I had it built going into the event. And then the night before the event, I was like, maybe I should run Lanny's Son. I mean, I've already got Tears. We've got Nymeria. Ariane would be great with First Snow. And this is just not who I am. I'm not that guy who's like, I'm going to build a deck the night before I never played before. This will be great. So I went into the tournament feeling a little bit uncomfortable. How about you, Neil? How did your prep go?
My prep had been testing a lot of different decks, and about a week or 2 before the event, I had been feeling like, okay, I'll probably either play Stark Fealty or Barra Fealty. I think both of them are pretty good in the first snow meta, but aren't Lannister, because I just didn't want to play Lannister.
That's weird.
And as we'll hear, the morning of the tournament, I was like, you know what? I'm kind of interested about Tyrell, doing some Tyrell. So I put together a Tyrell Fealty deck and ran that.
Yeah. All day I was looking at you going, I'm so jealous. Like, I ran this super high variance deck, and Neil ran the deck I wanted to play that I didn't have the stones to play. I was just terrified that there would be Nymerias everywhere, and that Barrow would be there, and she would be locked down all game. There were 2 Martell players, and they were like the bottom 2 players of the tournament. Like, it was just a complete non-issue. There was no Martell in the event as far as we were concerned. And I'm looking at the whole day going, why didn't I play Queen of Thorns? She would have been amazing. Because in my build, I had 3 ladies, 3 bodyguards, 3 Queen of Thorns. Once she hit the table, she wasn't going anywhere. You were either going to kneel her, take her icon, or she was going to wreck your face in. So it was one of those regretful moments. But we'll get back to that tournament. We want to do a pack review first, since we're going to be talking about cards from the pack
and how they affected the tournament and the meta.
Yeah, and if you don't care about what we have to say about our tournament, which is totally fair, also you can just stop after that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this pack. Just before we start, I feel like this pack has been slightly less influential than packs before it, despite having First Snow, which is a really influential card. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel like there's a lot of solid cards, but there's not as many game breakers as that there have been. Although,
it's a little early to really tell, but I think that there are. I'm not sure.
Okay. Let's start with Hodor. Hodor is one of these awesome cards that's just like a one of in every Stark deck. He's very 1.0-ish, a cheap cost point for a big buy. Like, when I first saw him, it just looks like a 1.0 card. 2 costs for 4 strength Bicon. That's a pretty standard, good one of Chud in a 1.0 deck. He has some limitations. He can't attack unless you control Bran. He doesn't count his strength towards dominance, but he's a good blocker.
Yeah, just solid card. I agree. One of in pretty much every main house Stark deck.
Yeah,
Solid.
yeah, definitely. I'd play him in banners if I could, but I'm pretty sure most people wouldn't let that fly.
No.
All right, Wardens of the North. This is a real good plot, Neil.
It is.
It's real good.
I just keep getting more and more impressed with it.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's good stats 5/5, 1, 5 reserves a little low, it's fine. And then challenge action. If you already have a Stark character in, you just put another one in. You do have to kneel it, but you can do it twice per round. That's the crazy part.
I didn't realize that until the tournament, and my opponent almost wrecked me with it, but didn't.
Oh, that's funny.
But yeah, being able to do that twice just takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because it's in the same pack as First Snow. And First Snow sort of shuts this plot down, right? Like the whole point of First Snow is that boards supposedly aren't going to be as out of control. But as we'll talk about later, I feel like First Snow is not quite as good as I originally had thought it would be. It does shut boards down a little bit, like if you happen to hit this plot on the First Snow turn. But if you don't, I feel like people aren't playing around First Snow as much as I thought they would. And they're repopulating fairly quickly after First Snow anyway. So this plot, I think, is still going to be real strong.
Yeah.
It's a war
really
plot.
Good
It's a war plot, Neil. Turns on the army.
Yeah, it does. That's not bad either.
Yeah. Good thing it's plot limit 1. Because just the stats. Just a 5/5/1, like something bland would be a fine plot. But this is a real good Warden's plot. I haven't played a Stark deck since this came out, but I'm real excited to put it in. I've been waiting for the box, Neil. I don't know about you, but I've been like, all right, once the box hits, I'm only playing Stark, so I'll just wait. That's fine.
Yeah, I've been playing some fealty to try out the plot, and just because I like Stark to kind of, I hadn't played a ton of Stark before that, so I wanted to play some to kind of be prepared to be able to easily assimilate the box in. But yeah, I think there will be a lot of Stark after that for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that. All right, Tyrell dominated this pack, and so we have Horus Redwine. Horus is amazing. He's not just good.
Oh man, phenomenal.
He is nuts.
Yeah.
His stats are fine, right? 5 cost, 4 strength, Bicon. That's fine. But whenever he kneels, he stands a lady. So Neil, who are you stand? Who's your favorite target for Horus? Because he's got some good ones.
Easily Marjorie.
Easily Marjorie.
Yeah.
For me, it's easily Queen of Thorns if, the magical Christmas land situation opens up where she can just completely dominate the board. But you're right. In any deck, Marjorie's great. If you can hit Marjorie twice, that's 6 strength permanently being buffed out. He's just great because Marjorie's so great.
Yeah, if Marjorie's on the board, you can just make him a 10 strength every turn.
Yeah, that seems unlikely, but yeah, you could. You could do that. Always have put to the sword ready to go. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great way to just force through a challenge with one guy, and then maybe you trigger your Lady Sansa's Rose.
Yeah, that's true. He is a knight. Yeah, he's really great. I started with 2 of him in my deck, wondering, like, is that going to be right? And yeah, two is a great number.
Yeah.
I don't think 3 is right, but I think 2 is a definite.
I'm tempted to do 3.
Are you?
At
I mean,
least
it could be
2,
right.
though.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing is he's not loyal, so you can do all kinds of cool stuff. You could pair him with the Stark ladies. You could pair him with Asha. You could do all kinds of different combinations. You could pair him with your lady, Lady D.
Yeah, that's what I was. That was going to be my fallback deck if I didn't end up liking the Tyrell deck that I built the morning of. I was going to do.
When were you going to decide this? That you didn't
I was going to do
deck?
Targaryen Banner of the Rose, and trying to do those sorts of shenanigans.
Yeah, and that'd be great as well. That's what's so cool about him, that there are multiple good targets that he can hit. So even if Marjorie's dead, you still have plenty of options.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and then of course the big, huge winner card in Tyrell, at least in my opinion, the Arbor. I'm gonna go with Arbor's the best card in the pack. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it is the card that. Yeah, it might be. The thing is, I don't think long term it'll be the best card in the pack. I think short term it creates a new deck and brings Tyrell up to a level that's playable.
Okay.
While I think that some of the plots might have more staying power in the game and turn out to eventually be much more powerful overall.
Interesting. At least with the way 2.0 works now, I think the Arbor is amazing even long term. There could be a point though where we have enough neutral gold locations and stuff like that where Arbor at 4 you start going, that's kind of expensive, especially if the meta shifts to accommodate it and there's a lot of location destruction. Then the Arbor becomes much less tenable. But right now, where nothing really hits it except it's really strong. Like being able to get that out. If you can get this out on the flop or first turn, the whole game shifts. Right. I had tons of draw in my deck with pleasure barges and coppers, and you're just chucking stuff onto the board. You're able to run Oleana's Cunning now because you have this extra gold floating around. And Oleana's Cunning allows you to do crazy stupid things. Like, I'll attack with Queen of Thorns, and they're like, well, I can't give you a character. When you play your Cunning, that would just be madness. So you're like, I'll get Tears or Balon. And they're like, bah! So it puts them in these unwinnable spots having tons of gold. And I feel like Tyrell to this point hasn't had that. They don't have the Tyrion or the Tywin to just give them piles. And now, Tyrell with piles of gold is a scary thing to behold, I think.
Yeah, we'll talk about my experience with the Arbor in the tournament more later, but I think that it definitely creates a deck that has a different feel from most other decks I've played in 2.0, which is very cool. And as with any deck, I think that the Arbor creates a deck that has some very good matchups and some very bad matchups.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of a tempo hit, right, to play it.
It's so... Yeah. Getting it on the flop is amazing, bonkers good.
Yeah,
Playing it turn 1, depending on what you're going against, you might just lose.
Yeah, it does definitely depend. I actually had a game where before the mulligan, I could only play Arbor, and it was against Stark, and I decided to go for it. I was like, I just want to see, right? Like, I know I might lose this one, but I want to see. And then they went like Arya, Ice, something else, and then they went Arya, win the military, pump it with Winter is Coming, use Ice, and they cleared my board every single time. Even though I had 3 extra gold, it just wasn't enough because I had no board to start with, and I just couldn't claw my way back. So I think you're right. It definitely depends on the matchup. But any slow deck, oh my goodness, it's just...
Yes,
it's just
against any sort of slower, control-y deck, it really gives you an insane amount of value.
Yeah, I really like it. I'm looking forward to playing more Tyrell in the future simply because of the Arbor. I think the Arbor makes Tyrell as a whole much more tenable.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, let's move to Halder. I'm guessing Halder's a card you've looked at. I know you don't have this in front of you. You want to read it even though you don't have it in front of you?
Sure. Halder, you kneel a Night's Watch attachment or location to give a Night's Watch character +1 strength. And there's no limit to how many times you can do that in a phase. I think he's really, really good, except for Snow of Winter exists. And he is 3 cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fine. I mean, you can't build a whole deck around only little guys, but I think it's fine.
Yeah, it's just an issue because Night's Watch is pretty much all little guys.
Yeah, that's more the issue to me.
And his focus is on a more mono Night's Watch deck because you have to... What you're kneeling has to be Night's Watch. What you're buffing has to be Night's Watch. He's Night's Watch. So you're stuck with a deck that's very weak to First Snow, and he does nothing to help that. But all that being said, I think he's still a very strong Night's Watch card.
Yeah, he's interesting. I think he especially combos well with the practice blade that we saw in the
Mm-hmm.
last pack. What is that? It's giving 1 strength and a military icon. Is that
Yep.
right? And then when you kneel, it doesn't lose anything anyway, so it's giving really 2 strength and a military icon. So yeah, I mean, I think he's decent. I think the more stuff we have, the better. It's kind
Sure.
of limited where it has to be a Night's Watch character, has to be a Night's Watch location or attachment. So, like, I was initially thinking you could do something crazy like with the Viper, and kind of this would help a Voltron deck to some degree. But the problem is you'd have to Voltron up a different character with the Night's Watch attachments, and then you could put him in that character with the Viper. But then it's much harder to defend 2 guys eternally than 1 Voltron character. So I don't think that would work, is what I'm saying. But basically, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I think it's going to swing board states. It screws with challenge math. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's solid. I mean, 3 costs, 2 strengths, not terrible. I know you've played him. You seem to like him a fair amount.
Yeah, I just think he's very good. He gives Night's Watch more tricks, which they were sorely needing, because the strength can go anywhere from anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like him a lot.
Yeah. Being able to ambush and practice blade and then use him, it can kind of get up there quickly.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Let's move on to the Watcher on the Walls.
Speaking
Oh.
of tricks for Night's Watch,
Oh, they got one, Neil. They got a trick. And it's
yeah,
loyal, so you could just leave your house card up. Who knows? I got no cold. What's the worst that could happen? I think it's probably a bad card, but in like a defensive deck, one of these wall decks where you're just getting rangers out because they all have stealth, and your goal is just to shut everything down. I don't know. I mean, you don't have to let it through unopposed, right? You just block it so it's not unopposed still, and then you kill all their guys. In fact, you don't. This isn't even a resolution. This is just a challenge action, so you don't even have to
yeah,
block it. You just kill all their guys.
yeah.
I don't know. I
I
mean, Gregor, right? He wants to put to the sword. He wants to do all his shenanigans. They go Gregor and Jamie because Jamie
yeah.
doesn't kneel
Why wouldn't
anyway,
Jamie be attacking?
right? And then just boom, they're dead. So I don't know. I mean, Stark had a card just like this in 1.0, and no one ever played it. I don't know, but it feels like Night's Watch wants to be defensive. So maybe in a defensive deck, this is a 2 of, and we're just gonna have to be real careful and play around it.
Yeah, I think it's a great threat to have, especially in a meta that, at least around here, is overrun with Lannister aggressive killy decks.
Yeah.
And when it isn't, it's Targ killing everything, and when it isn't, it's Stark killing everything.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, it definitely has a good place. The bad thing is that it's still pretty early on, so it can be tough to build a big enough board where you have those rangers up. And because you have to kneel specifically to rangers,
Yeah.
it's pretty telegraphed unless you have some crazy situation where you're sitting on 5 gold, they declare military,
Yeah.
reaction jump in Sir Alistair, then
Right.
kneel him and another ranger that you had on the board. But that's also, I mean, you're sitting on 5 gold. What else are you going to do as Night's Watch?
Yeah. I mean, the nice thing is if you can make them go first, and they do their challenge, there's a decent chance, I think, that you could set up a situation where you have 2 rangers left just to block that military challenge.
Yeah.
Because you don't, like, especially if they have stealth or something, so you're like, well, I have to leave these guys up so that you can't stealth them. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you kind of have to telegraph it, but then on the other side, you can telegraph it falsely, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it scares them out of doing their challenges. So I kind of view it as like a really weak Dracarys, right? Like half of the value of Dracarys is not having it in your hand. It is the awareness your opponent has that at any moment their guy might die.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's interesting. If I was running a Night's Watch defensive deck, it would go in the deck. Simple as
For
that.
sure.
But how good is that deck going to be? How good globally is this card? I don't know. We'll have to see, I think.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on then. Next card we've got is For the Watch. You cannot lose The first challenge initiated against you each phase. I don't know. This doesn't seem that good to me.
Yeah, when I first saw it, I was really excited. I thought it would be great, but the little bit that I've played it, it's just okay, which is not what you want from these generally overpowered faction plots. This one's just fine.
I mean, I love the initiative on it. Like, it
Yes.
basically means you're going second, which is what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that they have to do their challenges. And then the problem with the plot, of course, for me at least, is they know they can't win all three anyway, right? There's one that they just are doing, and that's the one that they lose, right? They're like, well, I'm not going to be able to win the military, but I might be able to stealth past the intrigue. So I'll just, whatever, I'll just throw the military out there, and then, yeah, they can leave it unopposed, but they would only have to kneel one guy anyway. It just feels like there's not that many spots where having that one extra guy up is going to be the difference maker. And I'm sure there will be times where it is, but I just feel like a plot is such a fundamental card in your deck. It defines your entire deck, and I just don't think this effect is good enough for that. I think it should be 5 gold with the effect as weak as it is, personally.
Yeah, the only cool combo with it is the Sword in the Darkness from the core set, where they do a chump little attack because they know they're going to lose it. You defend with 5 or more strength, and now they get no more challenges.
Sure. Yep, that's reasonable.
So, but that's such a combo. Yeah, it's a plot, so you get to time it for when you've drawn the event, but it's still not very consistent, I feel. So,
Yeah. I feel like it's another piece in a defensive Night's Watch deck that isn't great, and maybe that's good. I don't think we really want a defensive Night's Watch deck that's totally dominant. I think that would be a really boring way to play Game of Thrones, and those decks are already doing okay. If we make them the tier 1 deck, Game of Thrones doesn't get that exciting. I just think this plot is kind of blah, and 5 gold wouldn't hurt it too much, and not making it all wouldn't hurt too much.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's move on then.
Sure.
Next is Gendry. Gendry's interesting, man. I mean, his stats are fine. 4/4 Bicon. That's not bad.
Yeah.
His force reaction is problematic. If an opponent wins dominance, discard a power from him or sack him. Or, well, sack a bastard character. You could have other bad. You could make a bastard deck all around Gendry.
Yeah.
And then reaction, after you win dominance, he gains a power. So he does, with the other card in this pack, really fuel a dominance Bera deck, which is already kind of what Bera's doing anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe having 2 of him in a deck isn't the worst thing. Like, especially once you get Iron Throne out, he's not going anywhere.
No.
Not
Yeah,
usually.
I like him pretty well. I think that he's a solid addition, like you said. Maybe only 2 copies, maybe 1. Throw in some of the 2-cost bastards just to have some chumps that you might sacrifice. I do like that it's the force reaction only triggers when your opponent wins dominance. So if you tie, he's fine.
That's true. If you both have 0, you're fine. And he really does allow you to pack up some power real quick. I was doing some math on that, and it's like if you run Feast for Crows and you have Painted Table out, you're getting 3 from Dominance, another one from Painted Table, another one from Gendry. That's 5 without doing anything, right? That's not even assuming you won your power challenge, which you probably did because you're Bera. So that's 6. Let's say you did it with Bob. That's 7 from Renown. You're halfway there in a turn. Next turn, maybe you close it out with Clash of Kings or something. Like, it can be real crazy if you get all the dominance pieces together. But just as a character, I mean, he's a fine one of anyway. But in a dominance deck, he may be like, there may be a Bear dominance deck just out there already that just is defensive.
I don't think it's that different from what people were generally playing with Bear fealty kneeling. It's just switching a few choices to make it a little more dominance focused.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another deck for the tournament that I was like, I really want to make a Bear dominance deck. And I was like, I don't even know what the archetype... Like, I know what the basic archetype is, but I don't even know what house it goes with. Is it fealty? Does it pair with another house? I don't know. And so that's the problem with having a pack 3 days for an event, right? It's real hard to build an entire new archetype without testing it at all and just have the balls to be like, I think this would be good.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that size of balls, so I did not build my Bear dominance deck for the event. But I'm looking forward to it because this other card is really awesome as well. After you win dominance, draw a card. Only 2 cost. That's a real good draw.
Yeah, Baratheon really needed more draw.
Really did. You got your red keep. So I mean, this was the deck I was going to build. It doesn't win any challenges except power. And so it just triggers red keep, wins its own power challenge, triggers the armory, triggers Gendry, painted table, and you just grind it out. And it's almost a rush win dominance deck, which sounds ridiculous. It's like 4 turns and you win, and you're like, what? A rush dominance deck? So you don't even do challenges? No, I do. I do my power challenge. It's cool. I don't know. It's probably crazy, but it seems reasonable.
Yeah, but it's another solid location that probably want to find at least 1 copy of it in your Baratheon deck.
Yeah. I mean, if you're running the typical 2 Iron Throne, 1 Iron Throne, 2 painted table kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just try and find 1 copy of it in any Baratheon deck that can take it because it's draw. And even if you're not focusing on dominance, it forces your opponent to really fight for it if they're not going to want you to be drawing.
That's true. That's not a bad point. Maybe it stops them from making 1 challenge that they would have made otherwise.
Yeah.
Red Cloaks? Red Cloaks might be busted, Neil. If it wasn't for First Snow, they would be busted.
Yeah, First Snow definitely decreases their power level by a good amount, but they're still very, very solid.
Yeah, they're like, I've only played with them a couple times. Imrahul, for those of you who know him, was over here for a little while today, and we had a game, and I got a Red Cloaks out. Turn 1, I had Tyrion. By turn 3, he had 5 gold on him. He was a 7 strength in intrigue challenges. So that's kind of bonkers. Like, he's real good. He's real good. So, yeah. I mean, at 2 cost, I don't know. Do we want to say he's the best 2-coster in the game?
Ooh, that's really hard to say. There's some pretty great 2-costers.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far. There's some solid ones, but he's real solid.
Yeah, and of course, he's an army. And he's the first army with an intrigue icon. Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people are going to be dusting off their Muster the Realms and seeing if the armies are now a real thing.
They are. I'm saying it now. That Targ Lanny deck that I played, I have played a lot of fish bowling type situations with it. It always has armies. Because when you can have a 2-cost army that you can just put out there, and then you can ambush in gold cloaks if you need to. And then you have Unsullieds. Like, it's just 9 is enough if 3 of them are 2 cost, because then you don't have to worry. Like, the old problem was if you wanted to have 9, they just took all of your high cost slots, and then it was kind of untenable. But when you can pull out a 2-coster for an army, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So he's super strong, and with Muster he's so flexible, right? You're like, okay, what am I going to do? 2 claim mill, 2 claim intrigue. You know what? What do you think? I'm going to do my power first. What guys do you want to block with? What are you willing to give up, Neil? Are you willing to give us the military or the intrigue? He really, really sticks it to you with Muster.
Yeah. So I really strong card.
Yeah, he's not like flashy exciting, but just the culmination of the cost, the pump, and the army trait makes him really exciting in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Paid off. So paid off, if you win an intrigue, Neil attached character, unless they can, and then they give you 1 if they want to stand it. And it's ambush 1. So I played it in my initial First Snow decks. The thought was, so here's the problem. I got way too far down the First Snow rabbit hole. And I'm going to admit that right now. So what I would do is on the First Snow turn, it was like, all right, you're only going to have like 1 or 2 guys. Boom, one of them's going to get paid off. You're going to be boned even harder. No, this card doesn't work at all. This card is one of those cards where you might get it off once, but that's probably it. It's a very disappointing card. I think in the future, it might be real good in like some sort of choke deck, but just regular today, I think it's disappointing. What do you think, Neil? Have you tried it at all?
I haven't. I'm curious to try it in maybe a Martell deck. That seems pretty fun and interesting. But I can see, since there is such a clear and obvious way around it, that after the turn of ambushing it in, it's just a 1 gold tax, essentially.
Yeah.
Which, isn't the worst thing, but it doesn't really seem to do quite enough right now when there's so many other phenomenal Lannister cards that you could be playing.
Yeah, and that's really the issue, right? It's the card pool has gotten big enough where if this was in the core set, people may have played it.
Yeah.
But now there's enough cards where, I mean, I could easily build an 80 card Lannister deck and be pretty happy. And it just does not make that. I tried it for a day. I got it. I had it in my hand every game in a 4-game day. And only one time did I actually get to play it and get it to work, and it wasn't game changing. It was just kind of like, ha ha, that's all right. Like, and a card you can't set up, that's not what you want, right?
Yeah.
Cards that you can't set up,
tricky.
they have to be good. They have to be real good. And I just feel like this card isn't there yet. So we'll see. Future choke deck could be the linchpin of some choke deck. Who knows?
Maybe.
But right now, like you said, it's a tax. Feels like you're playing Netrunner. Like I'm gonna put up this ice and it's gonna tax you 1 every turn. That's not really how Thrones works, though.
Gross.
All right, Priest of the Drowned God. Is this the most boring decent card in the pack?
It's it's about on the level of like Hodor or the Red Cloaks, I feel, where it's
Are you
just
insane?
in level of like boringness.
Oh, okay, sure.
It's just a solid character.
Yeah, in most houses you wouldn't play this character, but in Greyjoy, which
The
is pretty
intrigue
weak
is
intrigue.
so good.
Yeah, it's a 3/3 that could be a 3/4 if you have 2 of them. So I like, especially Greyjoy Lord of the Crossing seems real close, and I think this character kind of pushes it to be more reasonable. And so from that perspective, the card is very useful today. Ask me in a year from now, and I'll probably be like, remember when we said that card was useful? Goodness, that card hasn't seen the light of day in 6 months. But yeah, for today, I think it's very useful.
Yep.
All right. Boring, but useful. Let's see, what's next? Loot. Oh, good old loot. I remember a lot of excitement about loot. And then when you go to build your deck, and you go, wait. I have so many locations in this deck. I don't have that many event slots. And I want to play because there's stuff like the Arbor and other decent things that I can hit with it. And I probably want to play Put to the Sword, maybe ×2. And Hand's Judgment's good in every deck. And maybe I want to play Arisen now. There's so much kill. Yeah, I don't have room for this, like, kind of cool, useful-ish card. I don't know.
Yeah. I love the design of loot.
Me too.
It's really cool.
Yep.
And the best case scenario is pretty nuts if they're playing Lannister and they have some turn where they've saved 10 gold for Tywin to be insane, and you get to just loot 10 cards from their deck.
Yeah.
But that is such dreamland craziness. Most turns people will have 0 to 2 gold, I feel like.
Yep.
And even getting rid of their gold and discarding those 2 cards isn't enough of an effect when you have to work so hard to get the unopposed.
Yeah. To me, the best spot for it would be like if they have 2 gold and they clearly want to do a Put to the Sword. But at that point, I think I'd rather just have Hand's Judgment.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to save 2 gold for Hand's Judgment, but it's way more versatile and way more... it's way more versatile than loot because loot, like you said, you have to win the unopposed. So it's like you have to be the first player to take their gold before they can do their put to the sword. It's just so situational that I just don't think it's a reasonable card.
Yeah, my only thing that I want to try with it to fulfill my Shaga combo dream is to play it with Targaryen and the Dothraki Crone, so that you loot like 5 cards off their deck and you get to kill whichever character you've looted.
Sure.
But again, you still have to somehow get in unopposed in there.
Yeah, and one thing to be really clear on: pillage is worthless. Like, just because you hit 5 cards off their deck, even if you hit 3 Gregors, it's not like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter.
Those 3 Gregors could have been the bottom 3 cards of the deck that
It's
they never would
irrelevant.
have seen anyway.
Yeah, it's totally irrelevant. It's just that game, whatever, it did matter. The only time it's relevant is if it's a decent location and you have Euron. And so if you're this card could be good in like a really heavy Euron deck, right? Where you're like, I'm summonings for Euron. This is a Euron deck. Or even just there's locations in the meta that have really taken over, and so you really, really want to be able to have answers for locations. And so maybe you can steal the Arbor before it gets going, or maybe you can steal Gas and Grey before it gets going. Again, that's real situational. It has to be a deck built around Euron. You still have to be able to win unopposed. It's just like we keep coming back to. The card is cool, but the card isn't good. Like they're different spots. So yeah, which is interesting. It's always fun for me, the cards people flip out about, and then when they actually come out, you're like, what? Why were you flipping out about that card? The card can't even get played. All right, let's move to Targ. We've got the Dothraki Outriders. Neil, 8 cost, 7 strength. Put to the sword anything you want. It's got pillage. You can reduce it by the number of Dothraki you have. Neil, this must be a 3 of in every Targ deck. Tell me it's a 3 of in every Targ deck.
Not yet. Maybe by the end of the cycle, there will be enough Dothraki to justify running 2 of this, maybe 3, depending on how the deck shapes up. It's not very good right now at all.
Yeah, it's another one of the Targ I feel like has gotten the most 100% useless cards for now. That maybe, but probably won't. Like Merchant Prince probably isn't ever going to be good. I know you think he's going to be good, and you played him today, but you're insane. And the Outriders is kind of the same thing. Like, unless it's not just Dothraki that have to be printed, they have to be good, right? It can't be like, I'm going to include these bad Dothraki to activate this overpriced card so that if I get them all together, I have a whole board full of not that great stuff. Like, it's hard. It's really, there have to be good Dothraki that get printed, and a fair amount of them, I think, for this to be good.
I am a little curious about using the Dothraki C to jump them in. After you've won like an early, say, power challenge where people aren't too concerned, so they're like, whatever, it's a little power challenge, I'll let it through. Yeah. Boom, he comes in, and now you can go to town. But even so inconsistent with so few Dothraki. But we'll come back to him later. Not very good right now.
Yeah. He has pillage, though, Neil. Neil's got pillage. I love when they just randomly throw pillage on a card like this. Like, what? Give it something cool, man, not pillage.
Pillage feels like... Yeah, you're right. It just kind of gets thrown on cards so that...
Yeah, they've got
something.
Yeah, right. It's like... I don't know how they factor that into their math. It's like 0.1 strength or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. All right. The card probably that the most people freaked out about that I did not think would be good right now, and I still don't think it is, Blood of the Dragon. I mean, this is the flashiest card, the sexiest card by far in the pack.
Yeah.
And at some point in the future, it will be disgustingly good. What do you think about it today, though, Neil?
Today, I think it's matchup dependent. I think that there are some places where it's really good. Against Stark, killing off their Bran, that's pretty nice.
Sure.
So there are a few cases like that where I do think it's pretty solid today, and I think it's worth running, and I think the day when it's really good might be pretty soon with some of the previewed cards we've seen coming
Yeah.
out very soon.
Yeah, to me, the problem with it is the 2 gold means I'm not that happy running two gold plots. So for me, it comes down to do I want to run this or coppers? If
This.
what?
This.
See, for me, I disagree. I want the cards. I want to draw Drac. I want to draw Danny. I want to draw Drogo. I want to draw Put the Sword, Tears. All these great cards I have. Versus really what you end up with is a turn where you get to kill a bunch of chumps if they haven't killed them already.
Mm-hmm.
And then if they have, they just don't attack with their decent guys that turn, which can be good. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe this means that you get a couple unopposed through and they don't attack. I don't know. To me, it seems real low impact right now. Do you remember Hatchling's Feast from 1.0 that targeted 3 guys and reduced their strength? When we get a card like that, this card will be sick. It becomes a board wipe then. It's just a totally amazing card. Until we have a multi-target card or enough burn redundancy, I don't know. It's okay.
I think it's pretty solid, and I don't think you need to play Counting Coppers in Targ. So I like this card. I think it's okay right now and will become phenomenal later.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I don't think I'm going to play it right now, but I'm looking forward to some people trying it out, and it'll help make my decisions easier as I see, how game wrecking can you make? Because there's a chance. I mean, if you can go like an early Drogo, like a Drogo turn 1 into Blood of the Dragon, killing all of their claim soak turn 2, it could be a real dominant play. And so the question to me is, do you get more plays like that, or does this become a turn 5 play that just kind of stalls out the game for a turn, which is a little bit less appealing to me than the aggro, kill a bunch of guys play.
Yeah, I mean, if you have the threat of burn, whether it's through characters like Danny, Unsullied, or they think you have Drac in hand, or future events that are printed, and it does stall them out for a turn, it usually will stall them on defense also, and so you're getting, hypothetically, 4 power from 3 unopposed and your power claim.
Yep, definitely.
Which is pretty solid with possibly killing off some chumps.
Yeah, that's true. And then with Plaza, it lets you kill Marjorie, which is kind of amazing. So there may be enough cases where it does end up being really good. I'm not fully sold on it yet. I definitely will admit there's going to be a time where this plot becomes the defining card in all of Targ, whereas right now I feel like Drac is that defining card.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see moving forward. And it's a plot, so it's always at your disposal, right? Anytime they have too many low dudes, you're just like, I'll pick the one where it kills all your guys. Okay, cool, let's move on. So yeah, I mean, there's certainly going to be upsides. All right, let's move on. So we've got the Maester of Starfall. This guy's a boring dude.
Yeah. I don't like it.
His ability's cool, right? Like it's so flexible, right? It's like, oh, you have a rush deck, I'll just take the Renown. Oh, you've got Euron who's pillaging stuff off, and that's cool. I'll get rid of that. You got your draw engine. I'll get rid of that. But you have to kneel a 3 strength character to make that happen.
Yeah, if he didn't have to kneel, if there was some other cost.
Yeah. Even just once per turn.
Cool.
Once per turn, being able to do that ability, I do not think would be amazing. I think he'd probably be like a one of in a deck because
give him a little less strength or something.
Even at his strength, he's just not that. He's a monocon that's 3/3. Like that's really terrible. And then his ability is not that good.
Yeah, I don't think he's good.
Yeah, I'm not sure he'll ever see play. There may be a deck that's controlly enough that would want a card like this. I think this is garbage card.
Unless we get to a point where they do crazy Maester chain stuff again and you just need Maesters. Ooh. But that seems unlikely / I hope that doesn't happen again.
You mean you can't wait for that to happen. All right. Condemned. Attached character loses a power icon, 1 cost attachment. I don't like this card. I don't really like a Tainted, but because Tears exists, I like a Tainted more than this card. I've heard some people say they like this card better because it stops a lot of Renown characters from being able to pick up Renown. I just don't like cards like this. I'd rather, if I was going to play an attachment like that, I'd rather play like Milk. I'd rather play my own little bird. You know, these little icon cards. I don't know. What do you think, Neil?
Um, yeah, I don't love this right now. I'm kind of waiting and reserving judgment until the third one comes out and we get one that also strips military to then look at them in total and see like,
Sure.
is there a deck where you run all three of them and just make it so none of their characters ever get to do anything?
Yeah.
Once we have the full scope of it, then I think it'll be more interesting. But in general, it's again a card you can't set up, which
Yeah.
makes it a lot tougher.
To me, that is huge. If that didn't say opponent's characters only, and I could just load up my Chud with these on setup, kill him, and get them all back, that would be a totally different card to me.
Yeah.
But I have a hard time thinking there are 9 of these I'm going to have in any deck. 9 cards I can't set up before I get to events. Before I get to Milks, I already have 9.
Yeah.
That is brutal. It would have to be a really good control deck. But it could be interesting. Like you said, if you have Nymeria and you have these 9 icon strippers, that's a lot of stuff, right? You hit Gregor with the military one. You hit, I don't know. What do you want to do? Maybe Bob with the power one and then strip the military away with Nymeria every turn. Like you can do a lot of control. The problem is there aren't that many monocons, right? Most decent characters are bicons, but stripping Jaime's military, that really hurts him. Only having intrigue takes away a lot of his strength. So I don't know. You may be right. Maybe there's going to be something there. It'll be interesting. In a vacuum, though, I think this card is borderline unplayable.
Okay.
But we'll see. In the right deck, maybe. All right. The Wildling Scout. This card's interesting.
I like it.
I don't love it, but because it has an intrigue icon, it seems like it can slot in some... Yes, it is. But it seems like it could slot into a bunch of decks that are a little bit light on intrigue that then just randomly can have a stealth icon if they need it. The problem is having to blow up a 2-cost dude for a one-time effect that's not a kill effect or a stand effect to power a really amazing character. All it does, it lets you probably win a challenge. It's a little more situational than I would like it to be.
Yeah, it's not that far off, though, from a stand or a kill because it enables those sorts of things, I think. Having a stealth can be really huge if you have that character in play to really take care of it. I mean, that's why Sirio is worth 5 cost for a 3 strength monocon.
Yeah.
Is because he gives admittedly repeated stealth.
Yep.
But it doesn't matter as much that he gives the military icon. It's really about the stealth. And so I think that this is a similar card that will, like you said, in decks that need a little bit of help in the intrigue department, see a good bit of play. Again, it's a 2 cost that can't be duped, so First Snow does make me a little more wary of just throwing in 3 of them and going to town.
Yep. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I think about him yet. I don't think I like him very much. I think a lot of people talked about how much they like him, and one-off effects to me, I don't know. The threat of them has to be really good, and I feel like the threat of stealth is less good than like a Handmaiden having the threat of standing Dany again. To me, because there's so many things you have to put with that, right? You have to have the gold left also if you want to be threatening, like, okay, this stealth is going to get me a put to the sword or a tears or something. You have to be threatening cards in your hand, and you have to be threatening money. Whereas Dany's just Dany, right? Like I'm gonna get to draw a card. I'm gonna get to do another challenge. I'm gonna get to stand Dany and give all your guys -1. I feel like that's a more, I don't know. For me, it's a better ability than the Wildling Scout. Though you're right. I mean, the Wildling Scout turns off a lot of things also. If Greyjoy needs that unopposed and you can see that coming, then you can trigger it. It has to be before they declare the challenge, though. I don't know. He might be good. I don't love him, but we'll see. He's certainly going to be good in certain decks, but I don't love him.
Yep. Yeah, I know. You don't love a lot of things.
Oh, boy, I didn't see that coming. All right. First Snow of Winter, or as I call it. Should we
come back to First Snow in a second and just get Wraiths out of the way?
Yeah, sure, let's do that. Race and their miss. What the heck? I'm not... For today, this card is terrible. I think in the future, there may be like some sort of choke deck, right? Where you want to hit the reserve and really hold them back, but I don't know, to me, this is a garbage plot for now. What do you think?
I think it's an okay plot. I think that it's a decent way to open if your deck doesn't need some other specific opener, especially for an aggressive deck. You probably get to knock some cards out of their hand, get them closer to not being able to refill their board that you're going to be killing. And with the upcoming Stark box and packs previewed that have a lot of winter synergy, this will be even better. But I think that it's playable today in the right sort of deck.
I'm going to have to disagree with you 100% on the playable today. I feel like a 4-cost opener is really tough. Like, I feel like this plot should be a 5-1-1.
Oh, no.
Unless they just have some crazy ideas for this. Yeah, I guess we're just valuing that 2 reserve difference very differently. It's also 5 reserve itself, so it's really only a net 1, right? Like, they're a 6, they're going to a 4, you're a 5. So it's not quite as big of a swing as you might like it to be. I will admit the winter trait looks like it's going to be really important moving forward. And so from that perspective, it may go in a deck. I don't see it as an opener, though. A 4 gold as an opener to me is rough. And then later in the game, it's not that hard for most decks to go down to 4. I don't know. Like I said,
that's why I think it's an opener, because later in the game, most decks will be down to very few cards anyway. But so I think it's a solid opener. It doesn't get hit by naval. It's going to really hurt things like summons if they open with that.
Yeah,
I think it's solid. And even if they're opening with something like Noble Cause, that means they're probably playing one big dude and maybe like a chump or something.
Sure.
So they're going to have to discard down like 3 cards, maybe 2 if you intrigue them.
So let's move to the real world. Neil, am I going to see you opening with this anytime soon?
Yeah, probably.
I think you're a liar, Neil.
No.
I'm going to call you out right here as a liar.
Okay.
All right, we'll report back next time. We'll see if Neil's a liar or not. But my new prediction is he will definitely open with this at least once against me to show that he did not lie. He definitely did it.
I already have a deck in mind.
All right, there we go. All right, let's move to First Snow of Winter. First Snow of Winter is also a winter plot. I think everyone knows about this plot. Forced reaction. After challenges phase begins, return each character with printed cost 3 or lower to its owner's hand. It's a 3/5/1. This plot is pretty darn game defining, but I will say it's not as good as I thought it was going to be. It's interesting, right? Because you're doing it in the plot phase, you can't know entirely what they have in their hand, right? And so even there'll be games where the board looks like, if I first snow here, I'm going to have a huge advantage. I'm going to have these 3 guys. They're only going to have 1. What's the worst that could happen? Well, what's the worst that could happen is they play a decent gold plot, they top deck a King's Road, and suddenly put out 2 more guys, and you're like, oh, yeah, that could happen. That's kind of bad for me. But it is a good plot. Like, it's a strong plot. I like that it keeps people honest to some degree, right, Neil? It's a lot harder to just be like, all right, blah! Or, Tyrell, Lord of the Crossing, 2-cost knights everywhere. I'm going to win in 3 turns. You're like, no, you're absolutely not. You're like, third turn, I'm going to first snow, and now you have 0 power on the board on that turn where you thought you were going to win. So it's good for that. but it's not as game changing as I thought it would be from my perspective from the games I've played. I've played about maybe 25 games with it and trying to test for the store championship. What have your findings been of the plot?
I think the plot was way overhyped.
Yeah,
I think that also calling it like game defining, maybe it's a matter of semantics, but I don't think it's a game defining plot.
yeah,
I think that it's just another reset that is fine. It's good in the right deck, but I don't think that it's the seismic meta shift that everyone was calling it as.
yep.
Not everyone.
I
Of
certainly
course, there.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you certainly were. It's solid. The 3 gold can really hurt you. If you haven't gotten any economy. I've seen that in a few games where someone first knows, and like you said, I get to play some stuff because I played a real plot with real income, and they just don't really get to do anything other than threaten some events. So it's definitely a plot that you need to be aware of, but it's just similar to Wildfire, I think, where as long as you know that it's a possibility, it's not that hard to deal with. And the thing that I like about it the least is that it feels like it really hurts Night's Watch a huge amount, at this point at least.
yeah. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I will say though that people who have been doing well with that Night's Watch fealty deck swear that it doesn't hurt them very much. I don't know how this is possible, but that's what they're saying. It sounds
Yeah.
like madness to me.
That sounds insane to me. I think that it really would crush Night's Watch fealty by yeah, just forcing all of those cards back to your hand. And
Yeah. And what I really don't like about the plot right now is what helps most? Lanny, and not just Lanny, the Lanny Tywin start. It
Yep.
makes the Lanny Tywin start even more ridiculous because it's like, all right, I got Tywin and a location. I get 6 gold, bounce all your little guys. I get to play a decent sized guy and ambush in a little guy. Cool.
Yep.
And so it just really plays into what's already probably the best setup you can have. It just makes that setup even better. So like at the tournament we played, the 2 games I got Tywin out, first snow was just totally game wrecking. It just instantly won the game. The 2 games where I did not get Tywin out, one of them I didn't even play first snow. The other one I tried to pull it off because I was in kind of a desperate spot. And it just didn't work that well because it didn't have enough economy to really make it go. And so that I don't really like about it.
yeah, so all in all, I think that it's a well-balanced plot, which is good
Yeah.
news.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think you don't have to build decks around it quite as much as you think you do. Like, you probably can't build Tyrell, Lord of the Crossing, all 2-cost knights with Sansa's Rose and think you're going to win. Like, that's a little too dangerous. But saying things like, I don't know if I can play 3 Wildling Scouts, I don't think that's valid. I think as long as you have some decent cards in your deck, you're going to be fine. But you do have to be a little worried, right? If you only have one guy on the board who's more than 3 cost and you're playing against a deck that can run first snow, you do need to be thinking like, do I really drop Drogo here knowing he could easily just bounce my whole board and kill Drogo? Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't do that right now and I play the Unsullied and something else to kind of set up for if that happens.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that you mentioned in there is if they're running a deck that can run first snow,
Yeah.
it's not going to be in every deck.
No.
So depending on how the meta shifts and what other cards are released as time goes on, it won't be that big of an impact because it just won't be in that many decks.
Yeah. In 1.0, it was not a large impact card. There were certain times when it was good. There were certain decks that was very strong in. But First Snow of Winter seems to be much more closer to the 1.0 version than I thought it was going to be. I thought in an environment without Valor, this would kind of be the pseudo Valor. But a little spoiler, when you and I played, had I had Wildfire in our tournament versus First Snow, it would have been much better for me.
Oh yeah, wildfire would have wrecked me
Yeah.
hard.
Whereas First Snow is kind of like, well, I can bounce a couple of his cruddy guys, and he still has 5 awesome characters left. It's not
Hmm.
going all that well. All right, so yeah, like you said, it's a good plot. Be ready for it if you think that deck is running it, but it's not as game defining as I thought. I mean, I really going into that store championship, knowing we only had 3 days to prep, every single deck I built was how do I take advantage of how awesome First Snow is going to be, because you just don't have that experience to know, in a vacuum and knowing you're only gonna have 2 days to prep or whatever. So
Yeah.
bottom line, it's good, not game wrecking, not game defining.
Yep.
So,
So let's talk real quick about how that tournament went.
well, first we got to talk about winners and losers of the pack, man.
Sure, sure.
So who do you think is the big winner of the pack? I'm pretty sure we're going to be in unison on this one.
Yeah, I think that Tyrell is the big winner of the pack for sure.
Yeah, I think it's runaway too. Like it's just two really really strong cards. There's no card in this pack like Gregor or Balon or Tywin. There's no
Yeah.
like monster, but those two cards are both really really good.
I'd say that if it weren't for First Snow in this pack, I would say that Night's Watch would be the other winner. Because I think that all 3 cards that they got are range from pretty okay to really good. But First Snow hurts them so much, I can't really say that.
Sure, I would have put Night's Watch near the bottom.
I
My
know, but you don't play Night's Watch,
Sure,
so
right. My bottom is Martell. Like Martell got nothing. They
yeah,
were just
I
kind of
agree
like,
with that.
sorry Martell, you didn't get any cards in this pack. Maybe next time. All right, and you said you agreed with that.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely Martell got nothing this pack.
Okay. Well, there you go. That was simple enough. All right, so let's move to our store championship. We've talked about prep quite a bit. I'll talk about my day briefly because there's nothing really to talk about. I went 2-0 to start the day, and then I went 0-2 to finish the day, which is very Lannister, all in on jumping shenanigans way that it works. Right, it's a high variance deck. I knew going in I didn't want to play the deck. I didn't have the balls to play my Tyrell deck. I just didn't have another deck I liked. I'd practiced with it, and to be honest, I had not had that great of a record. I don't handle variance decks that well. That it usually goes poorly. Even so I won my first game pretty easily. The second game, I don't know if I told you this, I had a 3 gold flop,
Huh.
and I won because
Yeah.
Lannister is real strong, and I was able to exploit First No. But my opponent flopped Drogo and another dude and a location, and I flopped 3 gold. And I've said to him, well, I mean, you probably win this one, but it's a tournament. We'll play this thing out. We'll see how it goes. And it is a good example of how you really do need to dial in, focus, and fight. And you never know what you can pull off, especially if you're playing Lannister.
Mm-hmm.
And but then round 3 was against you, and round 4 didn't go well. It was one of those moments. You're both 2-1. Whoever wins makes the cut. My opponent made some questionable plays. I felt like I made some really good plays, and it doesn't always work out that way. So,
Yeah.
but so Neil, let's talk about your day, and as we can talk about our game a little bit as we're talking about your day. So you did substantially better than I did. So first of all, you woke up, you played Tyrell Fealty actually. Why did you play Tyrell Lord of the Crossing?
I had built the deck with fealty in mind and didn't feel like Lord of the Crossing was appropriate for what I was trying to do with the deck. Because I was just trying to get a lot of value out of the Arbor, play a lot of dudes, a lot of big guys to
Sure.
be First Snow proof, because I thought that a lot of people would be running aggressively First Snow centric decks. At least that's what I had been led to believe by all of our testing together.
Yeah, right. It's all I played. You're like every deck's First Snow.
And so you had suggested it to me as I was writing my deck list, and I was like, I could just switch the agenda. Like it doesn't change the deck really.
Sure.
But I decided to stick with fealty, and I'm glad I did. There were very few games where I was getting all 3 challenges in, unless I was already pretty well ahead.
Gotcha. Okay. So I think we built our decks slightly differently then.
Yeah.
Mine looked more like yours did in our game, where you had a board of like 9 dudes. That's what I was doing every game.
I mean, I did that most games as well, except for the ones that I lost, of course.
Sure,
But
right.
like I didn't when I was getting to that point, I was usually doing one challenge a turn. And I didn't want to because the way that I think that Tyrell fealty works right now, or at least the way I built it, is the Arbor makes it an attrition deck, I would say.
Okay.
You're going to lose the early game pretty bad. It's about surviving it and repopulating and then building eventually this unstoppable force of a board
Right.
that is just huge from all of your Arbor Gold, all of your draw, all of that sort of stuff. And so Lord of the Crossing, I was rarely going to be getting that extra power, I figured. And I don't think I would have gotten the extra strength or power because needed to defend too much, needed to,
Gotcha.
not let them win from all of their unopposed and all of their power gain before I could reach the tipping point where the Arbor gave me enough value to dominate.
Okay. I think that's fair.
And so my day went very well. I won my first 2 games. My first game was against a newer player, and I got an amazing start. My second game was against a pretty solid new to 2.0, but or player who started with 2.0, but pretty solid playing Stark. We both made a few mistakes where we missed triggers and that sort of thing. I think his cost him more, not being able to quite kill my whole board. And so then I was able to barely grind it out. That game I actually flopped the Arbor and the Mander. That was it.
Oh boy, that's an interesting flop.
Yeah, it worked out, but it was a tough game.
How many turns before you were able to trigger the Arbor? That seems. I mean, the Mander. It seems like that's like a 3-turn deal before you can actually trigger that.
Yeah, it took a while, but that was a game since he was playing Stark, I was able to get in intrigue challenges,
Oh, gotcha.
get him down to top decking, while I had a hand of 6 cards, and from there I was able to just repopulate as he only played dupes or locations.
Right. Gotcha.
The third game was our grudge match.
Yep. Both 2-0. Heading
Yep.
in, a clear run. Whoever wins this is automatically going to make the cut because we will be 3-0
In
playing
a
that last one.
16-person tournament.
Yep. So it was a auto cut. I had a much better start than you. And I just couldn't quite get you before that tipping point happened, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have wildfire, so once the tipping point happened, it just totally spun out of control. So by about 35 minutes into the game, it was clear he's reached the tipping point. I've lost. I'm trying to sort of claw in there, make things happen. You got a pretty early mare on a night of flowers to contest my Gregor every time, so I'm just digging for treacheries, hoping that I can get the one broken Gregor trigger to kill something amazing. And when I finally did push one through, it was just an event or something, and I was like,
Yeah.
that was my one chance. And I did, though, have a terrible blunder.
Yes.
So it was one of these things, you're playing Lord of the Crossing, right? So there's all these calculations happening. It felt very, very much like a chess game where it was like, I'm looking 3 challenges deep, all the things I'm going to be doing in this third challenge, all these different things I have to do. I'm going to have my treachery for the mare, and then I'm going to have my put to the sword for that, and all these things. And we get there, and because it'd been like, all right, I'm just going to do the intrigue, he can't block it, or even I'm going to do the intrigue, and he automatically blocks it. There's no real thinking involved. What did I forget to do, Neil, when I did my intrigue?
You didn't take your Tyrion gold.
Did not take my Tyrion gold, and so we got there. Everything worked out how I expected it to. I went to put to the sword Marjorie, and lo and behold, I did not have my 2 gold because I forgot to claim it. And then what happens the next turn? Neil goes, I'll dupe Marjorie. Boop, that was it. That was it. So it was one of those moments where I still might not have won because you were really close to reaching that tipping point anyway, but it was definitely one of those moments where that was where the game ended, period. Like, once you duped Marjorie, It was done. There was no way I could win after that. And it's hard. It's hard not to tilt, and it's hard to just be like, it's fine. I made an error. We're gonna have to move on. I still have another game, right? I have to win this because I've blown this, potential to turn it around. So, oh well.
Yeah, so that game definitely ended up going my way after I played the Arbor first turn, but was able to keep enough on the board to attrition my way to victory. And then the final game I played
real
against...
quick, in that game, did I do a first snow that just didn't quite work out? I'm thinking I did.
Yeah, you did a first snow, and it wasn't that effective. I think it was a turn where I was able to play some things down, and it bounced like maybe 2 of my guys, I want to say, but I had enough at that point that it didn't super matter.
Yeah, and it was one of those games where it's like I didn't have Tywin, and I didn't draw him all game, and I didn't draw him in game 4 either, right? That's one of the problems. But then it's like, I know it's not going to be great, but I can see it running away, right? It's not like you're flooding the board with little guys. You're like, Horus, Hobber. I'm like, oh, God. It's like now or never, and I don't think it's going to work that great, but this is it. Like, even if I draw a Tywin 2 turns from now, and I get a 5 gold first no, it's going to do nothing. Like, this is it. Maybe Neil won't drop something great with his Arbor and handful of cards. Very unlikely.
Yeah, it also might have been one of the games where a lot of games, if I thought they were about to first snow, I would do summons to try and get a dupe of Marjorie to dupe her if she was already on the table.
Yeah.
I may have done that game. I don't remember.
I don't either.
Then my final game was against our dear friend, John Barber. Playing,
dear friend? What?
playing Lannister Lord of the Crossing, as many people were, and I lost this game pretty badly. I didn't flop the Arbor. I had to play it first turn.
Oof.
And he just had a much more aggressive setup than everyone else I'd been playing, where he just kept doing the military and the put to the swords and keeping my board too small so that the tempo hit from the turn 1 Arbor was just my death knell. It was way too much for me to come back from. And he had a really solid first snow against me into naval superiority.
Nice.
That hurt pretty bad.
I feel like that's going to be one of the really interesting things about Arbor. Like, you build your deck around Arbor when you have it in your deck as a 3-of, right? You have more expensive guys. But then you have to know, like, in this matchup, can I get away with it? And it's going to really be this interesting skill cap card of, like, what can I get away with in this matchup? And can I even choose not to, right? Like, if my deck is so built around this, do I feel forced that I have to play it?
That's what I was feeling. Looking back, it may not have been the right choice, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So then there was the cut, which was 3 people playing Lannister Lord of the Crossing and me playing Tyrell Fealty.
And Bruno as the 5 who didn't make it, and me as the 6 that didn't make it. So it was a pretty decent field actually that we had there for being a smallish tournament.
Yeah, and so in the top 4 match, I played Lucas playing his patented, trademarked, copyrighted Bamf deck of jumping Lannisters. And he just didn't see any economy all game. And I got my Arbor out first turn and just attritioned it out. I think it went 8 or 9 plots. But by the end, I had a huge board and he had like 2 characters.
Yeah. Sounds like what happened to us. Exactly.
Yeah, it felt very similar, which was good for me. And then in the finals, I played against Barber again, and he beat me again with his very aggressive Lannister deck. And that game, I was so desperate for the Arbor, I mulliganed for it, still didn't have it. I did my building orders for it, still didn't get it.
Oh, pleasure barge for it.
I drew 2 cards, still didn't get it. Pleasure barge. It was the 3rd card off of the pleasure barge.
Oh, boy. You know what's interesting? You didn't learn from the first time around that maybe a turn 1 Arbor wasn't the way to go.
No, I didn't. I think that I didn't really have... I think I felt like I didn't really have a choice.
Sure.
because I had built my deck so expensive, I wasn't going to be able to reasonably play enough to contest the board anyway.
Yeah.
So I felt like, well, let's
This is
just
what
see
my
if
deck
it can
does.
work.
Right? My
Yeah.
deck is a rope-a-dope deck. Maybe I can pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
understand
couldn't.
that. This is what's really interesting. I wouldn't say this otherwise, but Barber did publish his list. He had 3 Put to the Torches, which to me is madness. If you've ever tried to build a Lannister deck, try squeezing in 3 Put to the Torches. I'm just telling you, you can't do it. But he did it anyway, specifically for Arbors. And Neil, how many times did you crush all those Arbors you played turn 1?
In our first game, I think first or second turn, tried to put to the torch it, but I had the cancel in hand, so he never got rid of my Arbor. And every single game that day, I got Arbor turn 1 or on the flop.
Nice. So I think we proved to John Barber what a terrible blunder he made, winning a tournament with Put to the Torch.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to tell somebody that their deck is less good than it could be when they win the tournament. But
It's
there you
true.
go. There you
Yeah,
go,
I don't
John
know
Barber.
I don't know if he used it in other matchups, but he certainly didn't need it against me.
Yeah, I mean it could be good against say Greyjoy, so it's not like it's the worst card. When I look at Lannister, I'm like I'd rather have that event, that event, that event, that event. Well, there you go. What I think, and I wanted to talk about this when we were talking about Arbor before, is Arbor's really interesting because is it going to become a meta shifter? Is it going to be one of those cards where people say, I want to play Greyjoy to specifically kill the Arbor. I want to start putting Put to the Torches in, which is in no deck. I have never seen a deck with a Put to the Torch until I saw Barber's deck. I should rephrase that. A deck that has done anything at an event. So it'll be really interesting. I don't think so, but it's interesting.
I had Put to the Torch in my 4th place deck at Worlds.
Did you really?
Yeah.
What were you afraid of?
I was afraid of Baratheon and the Red Keep and Chamber of the Painted Table.
Okay, that's fair. And everyone thought Baratheon was the deck to beat, and then it turned out that was actually Lannister.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Targaryen.
Yeah. And then it ended up being useless. So I shouldn't have had it in my deck.
That's funny. All right. Well, I think that wraps up another episode of Summer is Coming. My schedule is getting a little lighter, just as Neil's schedule is getting a little rougher. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean we'll have more episodes? Does that mean we'll have less episodes? I don't know, but Summer is Coming is always coming, whether or not you see
we'll
it.
probably be back in just a few short weeks when the Stark box drops to talk
we will.
all about how awesome it is.
Yeah. You know what? We should talk about this. I had an idea for an event, and this is a public service announcement for others who are thinking about this. I came with this idea that on April 7th, which is the release date, we could have a tournament in quotes, right? Like it's a tournament, but it's not structured in the way a tournament normally is. You have a round, and in between each round, you have about 15 minutes to make changes to your deck. You have to keep the same faction card, you have to keep the same agenda, but because there's such a huge influx of new start cards, I think it could be kind of fun to be like, well, I just literally opened this box 5 minutes before the tournament started, and I wanted to try these cards. It didn't really work out. I want to try these cards now and see how that works out. I think it'd be definitely a low-key, casual, fun type event for a Thursday night, which I don't think you want to have a super serious event Thursday night starting at 6 anyway. I don't know.
No.
Any thoughts on that?
I don't know why you would need to call it a tournament, and I don't know why you would keep people tied down to their faction and agenda. Because that basically, I mean, probably most people are going to be playing monos or, main house Stark anyway.
Right.
But that really means that everyone's going to be playing main house Stark rather
Pretty
than
much,
like,
yeah.
oh, these were cool. These other neutrals and like other faction cards, maybe I want to try something with those to see if I can beat the Starks.
The original thought was to be able to do that, but then is that just going to take too long to try to have people doing that? It's like you have X amount of time. Like, no, I just need 20 more minutes. I got all my cards spread out. Like it feels like it leads to some tough spots.
That's why I wouldn't necessarily do it a tournament style unless I know the San Diego crew is hosting admittedly on the weekend, probably a bigger tournament.
Yeah. I think
with the new box where you build 2 decks at the start of the tournament. One has to be Stark, whatever agenda you want.
Sure.
The other one has to be non-Stark and cannot banner to Stark. And so every
Okay.
round, half the players will play their Stark deck against the other half playing their non-Stark deck.
Sure. See how the Starks
Um,
do on the day.
yeah, so that
Seems like a
sounds like
fun
a
event.
very cool format and
Yeah.
gets around the I need 45 minutes to build a new deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a much more elaborate, but more fun event than what I have in mind. You need a little more time for that, but that does sound like a great idea. So if you're in San Diego the weekend after April 7th, be there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Neil. Well, thanks for stopping by again, and thank you all for stopping out there. And we'll be back soon. I'm guessing we'll be back next week with another Summer is Coming.
See ya.